A surprise on a Monday, the Lions adding another offensive coordinator, except he's not going to be the OC.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everybody, welcome in. It's a brand new week of Locked On Lions right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and the number one sports podcast network. Matt Derry with you on a Monday, January the 26th, and the Tuesday, January the 27th. Thank you for making us your first listen, everybody, and finding us wherever you get your podcast. Please, if you haven't, subscribe to our Locked On Lions YouTube channel. A lot to get to here on a Monday. This is Senior Bowl week. Activity down at Mobile. Lions staff is there. Brett Whitefield from Fantasy Points is there. We're hopefully going to talk to Brett, who covers the Senior Bowl each and every year, sometime this week, and get a Mobile update. That is for sure. Coming up on the program today, many of you have sent me, including some of our everydayers, on our Discord chat, a fake story that is out there with a fake quote from David Montgomery. I got to debunk that. We will discuss. It's also Mock Draft Monday. Yes, we're bringing it back each and every Monday. Up until the draft in late April, we will do a mock draft. And today's comes from Daniel Jeremiah from NFL.com, where, yes, he does have a defensive player going at number 17 for the Lions. Some assistant coaching news in Allen Park. Both guys that could be staying and leaving, we will discuss. But we got to get to the Mike Kafka news first. But before I talk about Mike Kafka, who now has joined the Lions staff, reportedly as a senior offensive assistant. This is from Tom Pelissero at the NFL Network, and I want to discuss this in a minute. I do want to say one thing, and I know what this show's about. I know that every day when you tune into Locked On Lions, you're looking for football content. You are looking for an escape sometimes from other things that is going on. I just want to make a point in saying that if I would have had to have done a podcast on Saturday or yesterday, I would not have been able to do it. I would not have been able to do it. Not the mindset that I was in, and my mind and brain and heart were in. It would not have happened. So here on a Monday, I'm moving forward. I'm doing my job, and we're talking football. The games, by the way, yesterday, quickly, that first game was an absolute dirty diaper. It was horrible. The snow was bad. The teams were bad. Like, I have no question in my mind that Seattle is going to win the Super Bowl. And I know it's 2 weeks away, and I saw the spread open to 3.5. Now our friends at FanDuel have it up to 5. The Seahawks and Rams, to me, those were the two best teams that played. And I know the snow had an effect on the first game, but my goodness, was that first game brutal to watch. Matt Stafford did all he could in that second game. I mean, the Rams special teams is just a tire fire and cost them the game, in my opinion. The botched punt return, the muff, and just every game, it seems like the Rams special teams screw them up. So Seattle and New England for the Super Bowl in a rematch of the Malcolm Butler game just a few years ago. All right, news that broke this afternoon, and this is a surprise, and I love this if you're the Lions. And this shows the Lions are being aggressive, and the Lions are willing to spend some money to bring in a highly regarded assistant coach. But I had been saying that I was hopeful that the Lions were going to either interview or even hire a guy like Mike Kafka for their offensive coordinator job. And it turns out that the Lions get Drew Petzing as their OC coming over from Arizona. And now Kafka is going to join the staff as well. Remember, there are other openings out there. There are head coaching openings still there, like Cleveland, like the Raiders. All right, there are offensive coordinator job openings out there. Pittsburgh's looking for an OC. Baltimore. Eventually, Cleveland will hire one. The Raiders. So there are still plenty of job openings out there. And Mike Kafka did interview for some OC jobs, did talk to the Lions, and it turns out that today, and again, Tom Pelissero reporting from NFL Network, that Kafka is going to join the Lions staff as some sort of high-ranking senior official and assistant coach. I think this is great. I love this. The more, the merrier. The more you can hire good coaches and good minds and bring them in the building, the better. Lions, remember, years back had John Fox on the staff as just like a senior assistant coach. Mike Kafka ran the Giants as their interim head coach for the second half of the season after Brian Daboll was fired. Mike Kafka nearly beat the Lions at Ford Field and Dan Campbell in that game back on November the 23rd, a game I attended with some of the trick plays and Jameis Winston. I think Kafka is a heck of a coach and a good offensive mind. And for the Lions to have the opportunity to bring him in and add him to the staff, I think is great. Now, there's not been an official announcement yet. There's not been a role defined yet for this. But look, we've talked about it. The Lions coaching staff this year did not get the job done. Nobody did. Coaches, the players, the front office. Despite winning 9 games, despite having 4 straight years of winning seasons, despite having 5 Pro Bowlers, now 6, as Jared Goff was added to the Pro Bowl squad today. By the way, I don't know if you saw this. You want to talk about cheapening the Pro Bowl, and I know it's just Pro Bowl games, and it's this coming weekend, like in Orlando, and they play a bunch of games and stuff, and it's not actual football and actual pads. But if you saw it today, Drake May, because he's quarterbacking the Patriots, is now not going to Orlando. Just like Sam Darnold, quarterbacking Seattle, is going to the Super Bowl. So Jared Goff was an alternate and is going to replace Darnold at these Pro Bowl games. Replacing Drake May at the Pro Bowl games this weekend is Shedeur Sanders. I'm sorry. I'm rooting for Shedeur. I actually like him. I think the Browns need to give him a chance. See what he can do next year. He might be better. I think he's going to be okay. I never understood the Shedeur bashing. I get it. He's immature. He does the watch routine and all that. He's Dion's kid. He made some mistakes. He got a pulled over twice for traffic violation. I mean, it wasn't the greatest of years for the Browns or Shedeur Sanders, but Pro Bowl? Like, it comes up on my Twitter feed. Like, Shedeur Sanders is going to replace Drake May at the Pro Bowl. There's nobody else? Come on. So now the Browns can boast. We had another Pro Bowler this year. Shedeur Sanders made the Pro Bowl. It's like, come on. Isn't there was nobody else? Again, it's just games and stuff, but I do put some stock into when the Pro Bowlers are picked. I digress. I'm making a point that Dan Campbell and the staff have got to do whatever it takes to bring the best people in, no matter the situation. I don't care if it's the training staff. I don't care if it's coaching staff. We know they've got to bring in some free agents and some players, and there's plenty of restructuring for this team to do with contracts this offseason. They can clear a ton of cap room with a Taylor Decker retirement, with a Jared Goff restructure, with an Amon-Ra St. Brown restructure. Maybe they cut Graham Glasgow. All right. There are ways to move money around so that the Lions can go out and maybe sign a big-time center. Maybe you get the kid from Buffalo. Maybe you grab Linderbaum from the Ravens. There's 2 right there. But bringing Mike Kafka in and acting now. And again, I don't know if Kafka was getting the Ravens offensive coordinator job or the Steelers job working for Mike McCarthy. Poor Steeler fans. Or the Browns working with, I think it's going to be Nate Steelhouse. You don't know. But the Lions acted pretty quickly here, and give Drew Petzing credit. Because Petzing's going, wait a minute, Kafka too? But if they're cool with that, and the more the better, the more minds the better, the more creativity the better, I love that. Now, there might be a reason that Kafka could be added to the staff, and that is because one of the Lions' assistant coaches is interviewing for the Ravens offensive coordinator job. We will tell you about that coming up next. It is a Monday edition of Locked On Lions right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your and the number one sports podcast network. All right, Monday Locked On Lions brought to you by PrizePicks. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to stay locked into every moment than with PrizePicks, the daily fantasy app where it always feels good to be right. With football season coming down to its final stretch, now's the perfect time to close it out strong, all right? PrizePicks makes watching the game even more exciting by letting you build simple lineups around player projections. No drafts, no waiting, just football action all the way through the postseason here. PrizePicks is easy to get started. All you got to do is pick 2 or more players and choose more or less on their stat projections. So if you think Drake May is going to throw for, let's say, less than 200 yards in the Super Bowl, you can bet on that with PrizePicks. It makes watching the games more engaging, especially during the postseason here, and of course, the big game. Favorite feature, early payouts, which lets you cash out if a player gets off to a hot start. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. And hey, Locked On Lions for today, also brought to you by Robinhood. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in what we call a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action, so when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, right? But never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood. Now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are allowed or offered by Robinhood Derivatives, LLC, a registered futures commissions merchant and swap firm. All right, welcome back in. Locked On Lions. It's a Monday edition. A little water here, a little parched on a Monday, fighting off a little cold here, but we appreciate all of you being with us, checking us out daily here. Shouts to our everydayers, all right? We appreciate you making Locked On Lions your first listen. Thank you again for making us the #1 sports podcast network. If you want to join our Everydayer Club, it is simple, all right? You can get an ad-free access to an ad-free audio feed of the show daily, and you can be in our Locked On Lions Everydayer Club Discord chat room, all right? It's simple. Go to lockedonlions.supercast.com. Tap the link in the show notes to learn more. We were chatting, a bunch of us, over the weekend right there on the old Discord. All right. One of the most popular assistant coaches on this team, whether he was running the running backs years ago and now is the current wide receivers coach of the Lions, Scotty Montgomery, interviewed today for the Ravens offensive coordinator job. Of course, the Ravens now are coached by Mike Minter. Jesse Minter, I know I was going to mess that up, the former Saints safety, Mike Minter. Jesse Minter, the former Michigan defensive coordinator, and the DC in LA under Jim Harbaugh the last 2 years with the Chargers, is now the head coach of the Baltimore Ravens. And Jesse Minter is a good young coach and a guy that I think is going to do a nice job there in Baltimore. But he wants to interview and has interviewed Scottie Montgomery for the Ravens OC job. Look, when you have winning like the Lions have had over the last few years, you're going to have attrition with the staff. We knew this. All right. Last year, the Lions seemingly lost a ton of assistant coaches. Ben Johnson, gone. Aaron Glenn, gone. And by the way, Aaron Glenn and the Jets is a mess. Oh, my God. Have you been reading about this? Now they are thinking about taking play calling duties away from Tanner Engstrand, their offensive coordinator and former Lions assistant. And they've already just recently let go 3 more assistant coaches. And they can't hire anybody. Aaron Glenn is desperately trying to replace Steve Wilkes as defensive coordinator, and nobody wants to go there. What a mess. What an absolute mess. But Scotty Montgomery is interviewing for the Ravens offensive coordinator job, and he is highly regarded. We know this. Players here love him. Whether it was St. Brown or J-Mo talking about Scotty this year as the wide receivers coach, whether it was a couple of years ago, the job that he did for Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Craig Reynolds, all the running backs coaches loved Scotty Montgomery as the running backs coach. He's getting an opportunity to talk to the Ravens about being their OC. And I think that speaks volumes about him. So there's a chance if Mike Kafka is brought on, who knows, maybe Kafka takes over the receivers if Montgomery leaves. So we'll keep you posted on that, how the interview went, and if he gets that opportunity. Would be the next step really, for a guy like Montgomery, and he'd be going to a damn good franchise in the Ravens. Mentioned the Jets earlier. They wanted to hire Jim O'Neill, or at least they had talked to Jim O'Neill, the Lions assistant secondary coach and safeties coach. He did interview for the Jets defensive coordinator spot under Aaron Glenn. Of course, they work together here in Detroit, but Jim O'Neill is staying with the Lions and will be their safeties coach. Lions have reportedly come to terms on a new deal for O'Neill. Again, Lions safeties, when healthy, Kirby Joseph, Brian Branch are as good as a duo as there is in the league. And Jim O'Neill is very respected in that locker room. And so he is back, which is a good news for the Lions, that he is staying on as safeties coach here in Detroit. So a lot of news on the coaching front. And how about this one, too? You ready for this one? Bob Quinn. Yes, the man I used to dub on my old 105.1 radio show, the Maestro, the former Maestro and general manager of the Lions, who did a horrific job here running the Lions and, of course, fired Caldwell and hired Matt Patricia. Bob Quinn is going with Kevin Stefanski from Cleveland to Atlanta to be a special assistant. He was in that same role with the Browns and now is going to be working closely with his new buddy, Kevin Stefanski. So Bob Quinn moving back to the NFC. Good luck to the Maestro. All right, let's do Mock Draft Monday, shall we? A brand spanking new Mock Draft 1.0. This comes from Daniel Jeremiah at the NFL Network and NFL.com. And I'm a big DJ fan, does the Chargers color commentary on the radio. Quick top 5 before we get to the Lions at 17. Fernando Mendoza, number 1 of the Raiders. Everybody has that. Arvell Reese, the edge rusher and linebacker from Ohio State, number 2 to the Jets. Arizona at 3, Spencer Fano, the big tackle from Utah. I've seen Fano go anywhere from 3 down to 17 to the Lions. Tennessee at 4, Francis Mauigoa, the big tackle from Miami. He's a monster. Best offensive lineman, I think, in this draft. And Mansour Delane, the cornerback from LSU, going at number 5 to the Giants. All right. Ruben Bain, by the way, would slide in this mock draft number 9 to Kansas City. And I'm telling you, that would be a massive mistake for any of these teams, not named the Raiders, to pass on Ruben Bain. I'd take Ruben Bain number 2. I think he's awesome. In this mock draft, Daniel Jeremiah for your Detroit Lions at number 17 selects edge rusher from Miami, Ruben Bain's partner in crime, Hakeem Mesidor from Miami. 24 years of age. I watched him in the national championship game against Indiana, a game in which not once but twice he took down Fernando Mendoza with sacks. That's where Daniel Jeremiah has the Lions going at 17, getting an edge rusher to put opposite of Aiden Hutchinson. DJ writes, quote, Mesidor would thrive opposite Aiden Hutchinson, going from one dynamic pass rush duo with Bain at Miami to another. I love this pick. How can you not love this pick? Now, here's the thing with the Lions. Would the Lions be opposed to taking Mesidor, who's 24 years of age? All right. Spent 5 years in college, is an older player, started his career at West Virginia, then ended up at Miami. And again, he's 24. All right. Now, would that be something maybe Brad Holmes would say? No, I like that. He's older. He's wise. He's not too young. Or is he looking up going, why would I take a 24-year-old when I can grab somebody younger at 21, 22 and obviously have him for the next 5 years? I mean, you're talking Mesidor turning 30 by the time his second contract comes up. With that being said, the player himself, what a motor. You watched him in the national championship game. Yes, Indiana's leaning to whatever side Ruben Bain is on, and maybe that helped Mesidor, but guy's got all the tools. Really, really good edge rusher, mature, NFL-ready body. That would be, I would not complain about that pick at all. Miami's front all year. The tackles, the edges with Bain and Mesidor were awesome. So, and he's a winner. played in the national championship game. I would love that pick if I'm the Lions. And again, I was having this conversation with a couple of our everydayers today, Joe Allen and Chris Druin. The Lions, let's say, took an offensive lineman, a center, a tackle at 17. They've got to address the defense with the next 3 picks at least. We're not sure about safety. We know the interior of the defensive line needs help. We know the edge rushing room needs help. There's been rumors about Gaines Media's own Alex Anzalone going to the Jets. Might need to replace him at a linebacker spot. So clearly the defense needed a lot of help second half of the year. They couldn't stop the run. At times in games couldn't get to the quarterback. So Mesidor, I would love at 17. I would endorse that pick immensely. All right, a little lesson for everybody coming up next about social media and what's real and what's not, because a bunch of you sent me something this weekend and it wasn't true. I will explain that coming up right here on this Monday edition of Locked On Lions. All right, Locked On Lions for today, also brought to you by our friends at Indeed. If you've ever hired somebody who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. If I needed to hire someone for Locked On Lions, let's say, I go straight to Indeed and be very specific about what I need. Real experience, not just a resume buzzword. Instead of struggling to get your job post seen, Indeed sponsored jobs helps your listing stand out and reach quality candidates faster. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on Locked On Lions. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. All right, Senior Bowl week here on Locked On Lions. We'll discuss it a little bit more tomorrow as the players working out in Mobile, Alabama, the game over the weekend. Brett Whitefield from Fantasy Points. I checked in with him. Hopefully get him on at some point this week to talk to him about some of the prospects that the Lions are looking at. Haynes King, the quarterback from Georgia Tech, according to Mike Payton from A to Z Sports, the Lions had conversations with him today. He's like a runner first, passer second. Look, Jared Goff's not going anywhere. Dan Campbell said that, but you always look at every position, all right, and see if you can upgrade there. Lions backup quarterback this year was Kyle Allen. I don't remember any games that he came into. Washington, maybe, in the blowout. That's about all I remember. All right, a couple of you, including one of our everydayers, my boy Anthony Rosenblum, texted me over the weekend a screenshot of a quote from David Montgomery talking about how happy he is with the addition of Drew Petzing as offensive coordinator. And if you see quotes, especially on Facebook, and I'm not going to turn the next 3 minutes into a Facebook bashing session, but I've noticed over the last couple of years, and really this has been more prevalent the last year, there are just so many fake stories about the Lions on that app and on that website. I just don't get it. I don't understand. And we've talked about it on this show before. Sheila Ford Hamp livid with something Dan Campbell says, and then you click, you scroll, because I follow so many things Lions, and because we post our podcast on Facebook, on my fan page, and also on the Locked On Lions page. It's in the rotation there and everything else that it pops up, and there's these fake stories. And here again, David Montgomery has not done an interview. David Montgomery has not met with anybody from the media. All right. There was no attribution to any kind of a quote from a player talking about Drew Petzing at all. You want a quote about Drew Petzing? Watch the St. Brown podcast, because that's all you're getting right now. Eventually, maybe a player will pop up. and do an interview with somebody, or right now there's no player availability. The players are off for the remainder of until they get back to some mini camps and stuff. So no, David Montgomery, if you saw this quote, you saw a picture of Montgomery and an image and a splashy little backdrop. It looks like it was made on Canva. No, he didn't talk. There's no attribution. There's no quote. There's no, he talked to Justin Rogers or Dave Burkett, or this was the Free Press or the News or MLive or anything else. ESPN, Lions.com, nothing. So I don't blame friends of mine for sending me this stuff because it looks real. Only guy that's talked about Drew Petzing was Amon-Ra on his podcast. And we talked about it last week. He took a little shot at the fans. So a little moment here to just warn everybody. Be careful what you see on the internet without attribution. If you see a fancy image and a quote, hopefully below it says Detroit, attributed Detroit News, Free Press, from ESPN.com, something like that. If not, double check and make sure, find the quote and put it in ChatGPT or Google and see if it's real. I'm very hopeful that David Montgomery likes the Petzing hire and wants to stay. And I hope that the Lions can figure out a way with an OC that loves to run the rock to get Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery back to where they were 2 years ago. Sharing care. I get it. Gibbs is special. He's arguably the top running back in the game. You need him on the field, but you also need David Montgomery. I don't want the Lions getting rid of good players. And I get it. There's salary cap things. There's money being moved. There's a lot of factors here. Maybe Montgomery told Brad Holmes before his end of the year press conference, get me out of here. I love it here, but I need to play more. And that's why maybe Brad wasn't fully committing to Montgomery being back next year. But he's a damn good player in his prime, runs people over, and I'd rather he be here than somewhere else. But the splashy imagery you saw on Facebook and other sites, that quote was not real. All right, we're back again tomorrow with another edition of Locked On Lions. We take you every single day, Monday through Friday, no matter what, here on Locked On Lions on the Locked On Podcast Network. Have a great Monday, everybody. Stay warm. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.